Okay, we are live on YouTube.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first May 2025 TNT meeting. We have one more in 1 week in case you guys want to join us again. So we have three items on our agenda today. The first item is the street renaming, which we went over last month. Second item is an open dining sidewalk cafe application, and a third is a presentation by DOT representatives regarding city bike station expansion. So without further ado, let's cover the first one.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda was a street renaming request application that we reviewed last month for Rosa Casella. The request was to rename the east side of 71st Street at 11th Avenue in honor of Rosa Casella, who passed away in 2024. She was the former executive director of the Neighborhood Improvement Association. Rosa was a longtime board member of Community Board 11 and an active member of the Dyker Heights community. So according to Community Board 10 guidelines, the CB10's Traffic and Transportation has to first review the street renaming application, which we did. In that application, we saw that there was civic leadership of Rosa Cassell through her dedicated work at the Neighborhood Improvement Association. Public notice and an affidavit as per CB10 guidelines was submitted to the district office by Senya Frangipani. Letters of support from local community organizations, including the 6862 Precinct Community Councils, the Dyker Heights Civic Association, Reaching Out Community Services, the Fort Hamilton Child and Youth Services Office, St. Ephraim's Friendship Club, as well as some local schools, and some other letters from community leaders. So this street renaming application does qualify for street renaming as per CB10 guidelines, Section C, for individuals with extraordinary and consistent voluntary commitment and dedication to the community over a prolonged period of time. And that's at least 10 years, demonstrating leadership and beneficial impact, not just to the civic group, but to the community at large. So at this point, on the second month of this review period, a motion is required by the Traffic and Transportation Committee if it supports the street renaming application for Rosa Casella at the east side of 71st Street and 11th Avenue. If adopted, the matter will be voted upon at the general board meeting taking place this Monday, May 19th, 7 p.m. at the Norwegian Christian Home, which is 1250 67th Street.
Okay, so let's open up for discussions. I see one hand up from Doris.
I make a motion to approve this street renaming.
Do I just have a
Yeah.
couple?
Yeah, so we
Have a
need a
second?
second and then we could open up to discussion. Carmen issued a second, and so discussion, and Larry has a question, Larry Stelter.
This is a co-naming, not a renaming.
Well, the
Just-
language that's the council uses is renaming.
I'm saying.
Oh, co-naming.
Co-naming is correct, but it's not the one, and that confusion.
Okay,
Right, it's co-naming because the street is still named whatever like number street it
11th
is.
Avenue and
Okay.
71st Street.
okay. Carmen has a question?
I said this years ago, street namings are actually my favorite part of being a board member. Sometimes you're fortunate enough to have met the person or heard about what they've done. And other times it could be somebody that passed away a while ago. But in both cases, the person was extraordinary in sacrificing their own time for others. And those are the people that make neighborhoods, any neighborhood better. And they have like a bigger heart. They care for other people. They extend themselves. People tend to trust them. And I grew up in a poor neighborhood, and I don't think anybody that impacted my life has a street named after them, but I can still remember how they made me feel and the impact they made on my life. It will be long lasting. And if just giving her a street name is all we can do right now, I'm all for it. Because the times I did get to meet her, she was always smiling. She always had people around her, people coming up to her, hugging her, kissing her, talking. And I just wish I had had more time to maybe talk to her. But I would always say, "Oh, I know you from the CB10 board," and she was always like, "Oh, Josephine," and she would give me a hug. And people like that are a rarity. And I just think I wish we could do more, but if this is the best we can do for her right now, you already know my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. I echo those sentiments. And I also just want to say like thank you to Senya for submitting the application and writing a wonderful letter, which partially read out in the last board meeting. It was very, very well written. And I never got the honor of working with Rosa, but she sounded like a wonderful person. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor and also seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay, it looks
Unanimous. Okay. I don't think there'll be any opportunity for against here or kudos here. So thank you so much.
okay, thank you. Okay, so our next item is a outdoor dining application, a request for a sidewalk cafe with 12 tables, 24 seats with setups on both 3rd Avenue and 89th Street. Panino Rustico has been operating at this location since 2023. There have been in the last about 2 years, only 4 311 noise complaints, and all were closed out with no action necessary. The applicant did submit a layout of the sidewalk cafe. I know the representative is here. Maybe she wants to jump in.
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. Kathleen Stathopoulos. I'm the attorney for the applicant here. So this is thank you. So this is a cafe that would be on, there would be 4 tables on 3rd Avenue, which would have 8 seats. The tables are 2 seats each. And on 89th Street, there would be another 8 tables, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, with 16 seats on it. It's interesting. I just learned this through doing this application, but the Department of Transportation advised me when we submitted the application that as far as they're concerned, they're only going to be, although they'll keep the plan in their file so that when inspectors go out, they realize what the plan is. But they said they're only going to be concerned with the 4 tables on 3rd Avenue because they said 89th Street is a private street. It's not under Department of Transportation of the City of New York. And that really surprised me. I'm like, no, you must be talking about a different street. And she's like, no, that's a private street.
No, it's not a private street.
Well-
I think what they were referring to is perhaps the area alongside the side street is located within their property line.
No, that's not what she said. It's interesting. You can call. She told me, she actually sent me the place where you can go and look it up. And I did look it up. She sent it to me. She said 89th, 88th, and 90th are all listed as, I said, they don't have private sanitation. That's absolutely not true.
No.
Well, anyway,
Well, anyway, I mean, I have the list from the borough president's
really affects
office.
you guys. It just affects
Okay.
my client because they're not going to charge them for that. So my client's like, okay, well, if you're not going to charge me. But anyway, that's I just wanted to bring that up. But their hours are 10 to 9, except for Sundays. And Fridays they open at 9 and they go to 9. And then Sundays they close down a little earlier at 7:30. Not AM, it should be PM.
Oh, it's PM. Yeah, that's a
It
typo.
should be
Mhm.
PM. They go backwards on Sundays. And that's basically the whole nutshell of it.
Okay. All right, let's open up for questions for this then. So I guess I'm a little confused. If DOT is saying that the street is a private street, when we are looking at the application, Josephine, should we be only looking at the 4th Avenue side, or should we be looking at both 4th Avenue and 89th Street side?
Well, I'm going to say that, I mean, I could speak to DOT tomorrow. I can tell you with great certainty that 89th Street off of 4th Avenue is not a listed private street. If it is if it's within the property line, like we do have a few restaurants in the district that have outdoor dining within their property line.
Yeah.
I know that they are not required to have a Department of Transportation permit. I know of those restaurants, and they are required by the State Liquor Authority to have an extension of premise. separate application for use in an outdoor area has to be reflected, actually both within the DOT permitted area as well as the side. But if they don't require and are not being charged, if they're within their property line, then it's not subject to the application. But I will double check that with DOT tomorrow. I know Leroy's on the call right now, so we'll be talking tomorrow.
I can also send you the person who's actually handling this is the woman I spoke to, and I can email you her information as well. So because it's not their property line, it definitely is not their property line. It's the city.
Okay.
It's the city sidewalk. So
The Borough President's topographical office, we have a list of private streets in the district.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. So yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think for the community board
Mhm.
purposes, you'd want to look at everything though, the whole.
Okay.
Did they have, I know they had tables in the front. Did they have them on that street last year or no?
Yeah, I think they've been there, right? During the temporary program, they had the seats on the side. Is that correct, Kathleen?
Yeah, they did have
Yeah,
seats
they
on the
did.
side. I don't know if it was this many or less or more. I can't really say for that, but they did have seats on that side as well.
Okay, any other, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the designs here. Any other questions? Okay, I guess with no other questions, so I'll put in the motion to approve this as stated, given that the application agreed to all of our standard stipulations, and we will figure out the private street issue separately. Okay, do I have a second?
Carmen?
All right, all in favor of
Okay.
that motion, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay. Any no's? Any against? Okay, any abstentions or recusals? Okay, I believe that passed.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
evening.
All right, Kathleen, we'll be in
Thank you.
touch. If you send that to me, we'll talk tomorrow
Okay,
then.
sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye now.
Okay, great. Oh, okay. Jack, I just want to say that we have about close to 30 attendees from the public also in attendance. So I just want to welcome them to the meeting of Community Board 10, as well as Community Board 10 Chair has joined us, Jane Marie Kapitanakis.
Fantastic. All right, let's have a good conversation about the next topic here. So I guess who from the DOT should I turn it over to discuss the expansion plans here?
Well, thank you very much, Jack, for allowing us to come here to talk about the expansion of City Bike into CB10. My name is Leroy Branch. I'm from the Brooklyn Borough Commissioner's Office, and I have with me Lisa Marasco and Samuel Hope, who are part of the bike unit. And I believe, Sam, are you going to be giving the presentation?
That's right.
Okay, so if you allow Sam to share, I think he can go right ahead and give the presentation.
Okay. I think I already have capability to share.
Yes, you should.
Okay. Yep, that's right. I'm Sam Hope. I'm a planner here at the Bike Share and Shared Mobility Unit, joined by my colleague Lisa Marasco. We have a little presentation for you. It's going to go over like an overview of the City Bike system, and then we have a draft plan with proposed station locations, which we'll show as well, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments. So, Bike Share overview. Bike Share is a network of shared bicycles that's intended for point-to-point transportation. It helps increase mobility, giving people another option for getting around their neighborhood or for connecting to other modes of transportation. These systems operate 24/7, and there's no worry about bike storage or maintenance because that's taken care of by the Bike Share company. And in addition to its convenience, cycling is a healthy and emission-free mode of transportation. City Bike is New York City's bike share system. It is the largest and most highly used bike share system in the country. And it's a public-private partnership between the City of New York and Lyft. The New York City Department of Transportation is responsible for system planning and outreach, and Lyft is responsible for the day-to-day operations and equipment. No city funds are used to run the system. It is supported by revenue generated from memberships and sponsorships. And City Bike is a station-based system made up of a network of over 2,000 stations where users can pick up and drop off bikes at any of these stations. And the stations are solar powered, modular, and movable. So if any construction or operational issues arise, stations can be easily relocated. And these stations can be placed on the sidewalk or in the roadbed, depending on a variety of factors. The program has been operating for 12 years. It launched in May 2013 with 300 stations and 6,000 bikes in Southern Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn. That's the original service area you can see in the light blue on this map here. And we started to expand the system in 2015. And by 2017, we had doubled the size of the initial service area. And between the years of 2019 and 2024, we did another expansion that yet again doubled the size of the service area. So you can see these two expansions in the medium and the dark blues on the map. So today, City Bike has over 2,000 stations and 39,000 bikes and provides service to all of Manhattan and large sections of the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. And 55% of New Yorkers now live within the City Bike service area. And through 2025 and 2026, we are going to continue to expand the service area further into the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens in these areas in the darkest blue here on the map. And once this expansion is complete, 70% of New Yorkers will live in the service area. A bit about ridership. Over the years, City Bike has had incredible growth in its members and rides per day, which is a testament to its popularity and utility. The program has over 175,000 annual members, and since launch, there have been over 260 million trips, with over 44 million trips taken in 2024. And during the peak summer, fall, and spring riding months, we see routinely over 150,000 daily trips. And notably, the average trip in 2024 was 1.5 miles and just over 9 minutes long. So speaking to its primary function as a connector of short point-to-point trips. There are already a few stations in CB10. We have just 6 stations at the very north of the neighborhood already, and we installed these as part of our Sunset Park expansion in March 2022. And these 6 stations in CB10 have 114,000 trips to date and an average of 16 trips per station per day, and have an average of 21 trips per station per day in peak riding months, which is on par with the rest of the stations in this area. Here are our pricing options. You can do a single ride, which for just $4.99 for just one point-to-point trip. There are also a day pass option for unlimited rides for one day. But by far the most popular membership is the annual membership, which is $220 a year for unlimited rides. And NYCHA residents and SNAP recipients are also eligible for a $5 a month unlimited ride membership with no annual commitment. So you can just pay for the months that you wish to use City Bike. All right, now I'm going to talk about our expansion planning process. Our planning process is done in these 4 steps, which I'll walk through each one in the next couple of slides. But for a quick overview, this winter we conducted station siting and public outreach. We are now in the middle of plan creation and are aiming to install stations in this community board in the fall. The first stage of our planning process is station siting. During this stage, our planners walk each block of the expansion area to find locations that are technically viable for bike share stations. So this involves careful consideration of local land uses and accessibility and utilities and hydrants, among many other things. We've found that to have a successful bike share system that's convenient and reliable, we need to have bike share stations we need to have a high density of stations that provide equal access to stations across the service area. So that whenever you're inside the service area, it's like a 3 to 5 minute walk to the closest station. To achieve this high density network, we use a grid system, which you can see here on the map. We aim to have about 1 station in each of these grids. And to accommodate for different levels of demand, we adjust the station size. So for instance, we site larger stations at transit hubs and key destinations, and lower density residential areas will have smaller stations. The second stage of the process focuses on public outreach, where we aim to provide information about the system and get feedback from New Yorkers about where they'd like to see city bike stations in their neighborhood. We held in-person pop-up and outreach events with the DOT Street Ambassador team at the Bay Ridge Library in February and March. We also have our online feedback portal where people can drop pins and give suggestions on station locations. And we shared this portal via our social media channels and sent the link to the community board and elected officials and other community groups so that they could share with their networks. You can see in this screenshot here that CB10 has received over 700 responses to the feedback portal. And we also connect with stakeholders in the community, including community-based organizations, large institutions, and elected officials. We are currently in the plan creation stage. This is where we identify locations for city bike stations. And we do this by combining the feedback we gathered through the outreach process with network considerations and on-the-ground conditions, and lift operational requirements to select our proposed sites. And we expect to install about 50 stations in Bay Ridge, and we have almost all these proposed locations ready to share with you now. And we will post this plan to our website following this meeting. So before we look at the draft plan, I just first want to quickly want to talk about what will happen in the next few months. Following this presentation, we will take feedback on the proposed locations and make adjustments to the plan where we can. We will then conduct any further coordination needed and do additional technical screenings at the sites and follow up if we make any updates to the plan. And then with some help from Lyft, we will conduct outreach to buildings and businesses adjacent to the stations prior to installation. And then we will begin to install the stations this fall, and we'll continue to do outreach, monitor the stations, and if any operational concerns arise, we can coordinate any follow-up actions. All right, let's take a look at the draft plan. So this is an overview of the plan for the community board. I have some zoomed in versions of this map that I can scroll through so we can see these in more detail. But before we do that, I just want to note that we have 50 stations planned, and the draft plan, along with this presentation, will be posted at our website tomorrow morning. So this is the northwest quadrant of the community board. The orange icons are the proposed locations. Triangles are locations that are planned for the sidewalk. Squares are locations planned for the roadbed. Squares with this dashed line around them are locations in the roadbed, but are pedestrianized areas or already regulated daylighting areas. So for instance, this site number 5 right here is a sidewalk station on the north side of 71st Street. The white letter in each icon is the cardinal direction of the side of the street that it would be on. So I'll let people look at this for another moment, and I'll work through a couple more of these maps, and then we can open it up for questions and comments, and of course, go back to any of these maps that anybody would like to see again.
What is the triangle with the asterisk?
This is a TBD site. We plan to put this one on the Greenway somewhere, but coordinating with other agencies at the moment. So here's the northeast quadrant of the community board, adjacent to the Gowanus Expressway and Leif Erikson Park to the north. And I'll go to this map showing the area between Shore Road and 4th Ave, and then between 78th Street and about 95th Street at the bottom here. And our final map, this is the southernmost area of the community board. And we have 49 sites proposed, and then there's the extra, the 50th site. We were gonna find a location here once the MTA construction wraps up. Okay, that concludes the presentation. So happy to answer any questions now. Go back to any of these maps.
Thank you, Samuel.
Can you hold it
This
there?
is-
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, someone in the audience wanted to know if you could just put the slide, the 32 slide up with location 32. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Samuel. Thanks for the presentation. Very much so looking forward to expansion. I guess I just want to start with a quick story that I have, just kind of set the scene here. One time I was on the 36 station subway, train was stopped, and I had a meeting I needed to get to in Manhattan. I took a city bike all the way to Atlantic Park Place just to be able to take a train all the way back into Manhattan. So that kind of saved my butt that one day, just because of that optionality at 36th Street. So thank you for that. So I thought Doris first, hands up. You're muted, Doris. You can unmute.
I mean, not having a lot of time to look at this, but you have several that are like a block apart.
Yes.
That seems inconsistent with what you have in other parts of the city.
Well, like I said, we have our grid system, so we try and keep about one station per grid to keep that density, and that's consistent throughout the city. There are some that are like on alternate ends of an avenue from one another, which is not our favorite network spacing. That's right, but for one reason or whatever, like we landed them in that area, maybe because
Well,
The
just
block.
on your area list, number 5 and 6,
yes.
they're a block apart. Do you know that?
Oh, we are well aware. Let me see. 5 and 6. Yes, they're an avenue apart from each other. But you see that they are in separate grid squares that we try and space the system out a bit.
Well, I think you need to review that because you don't need them a block apart. And my other concern is you have one at 99th Street and 3rd Avenue where it's a very irregular intersection with a dangerous light that people run all the time and very, very poor visibility.
Okay. At least it's taking
Stand
notes.
on the
so we're-
corner there for an hour.
Okay. That station would be on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I don't know if that alleviates any of your concerns, but we've definitely made a note of that, and we'll.
Is the
review
sidewalk
it.
wide enough for that?
I'm sure it is.
Yes.
If we placed it there.
Can you just remind me of the intersection that you just mentioned?
3rd Avenue and 99th Street.
Okay. And then just to kind of reiterate some, comments that Sam made, station placement is done with like a variety of like technically viable sites. So a lot of these locations might be the best opportunity we have. It might not be like the best spread of the network, but it might be the best option in terms of what's technically viable in these areas. And while we try to prioritize stations that accommodate and complement existing infrastructure or destinations, something we call a trip generator.
Okay, thank you. I saw Staley's hand next, and then we'll go to anyone in the room.
Hey,
Oh my God.
this is great. I'm a longtime City Bike user. I've had the same experience that Jack has had many times, where there's a train problem and thank goodness there's a City Bike station. I can just jump on and bike home or whatever. So it works out well for me. I wanted to comment quickly on something that Doris said, and then I also had a question of my own. Doris was speaking a little bit about the spacing of the stations. And I'll say as a City Bike user, it actually is sometimes helpful to have them a block or two apart, just because sometimes the stations are full. And when you're going to return the bike, it can be frustrating when you get there and there's no space to return it to. And then again, you're sort of grateful that there's a station maybe only a block or two over that has an open space that you can take the bike to. So there's some method to that idea of clustering them a little bit. The question I had is maybe this is kind of a weird question. One of the things we've talked about in other meetings of this committee are ways to use like City Bike and use the New York City Ferry to kind of promote and help with events that we have in the neighborhood. Like we have a lot of summer festivals and open streets and things like that in the neighborhood. I was wondering if there's any way to take a couple of stations and provide like free City Bike access. Like let's say you were having an event on a weekend and you wanted to say, okay, on Saturday, anyone can take a bike from this particular station to go to some kind of an event. If there's any kind of like sponsorship opportunities that are like that, if that question makes sense.
Sure. I mean, that question definitely makes sense. I think that could be something that you coordinate with Lyft, who owns and operates the system. I know recently they did their yearly City Bike Free Day, where like a couple Saturdays ago it was like, one City Bike ride for free for everybody kind of thing. So I think that's something you could approach them about, but it's definitely things that they've done like that in the past.
Is there anybody, just to quickly follow up, is there anybody that you'd be able to, like a name you'd be able to send along to our committee at Lyft, who's your contact over there for that kind of thing?
Definitely not off the top of my head, but I can
Stanley.
find the right contact and pass it along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I can talk to Josephine about that and get you a contact over there.
Any board members in the room have any questions? I saw. Otherwise, we'll go to Joe and Jim Marie.
Larry?
What does the on-street pedestrianized or daylit mean?
So there are some regulations like no standing anytime placed at intersections to daylight them or make it more visible. So you can't park cars there because it's obstruction, but so they're trying to open up visibility. City bikes, because they're so low to the ground, don't obstruct the vision. So we try and place these stations when given the opportunity in these daylit areas, places where cars can't park, but city bike stations can be, and it wasn't obstruct the visibility of the intersection. And pedestrianized area is like, I know we have one here, number 33, at the intersection of Narrows and Shore. There's a big like white hatched paint area where the crosswalk leads to. There's enough room that we could put a city bike station there without interfering with the pedestrian flow.
Okay, Carmen?
Well, I want to take this in a different direction. I started by saying street naming is my favorite, and these kind of meetings are my least favorite. When I read the thing and it said expanding city bike, I did not expect a map that's going to look like that. Because one of the biggest complaints I hear, not only from seniors, they're probably the bulk of them, is just crossing the streets and getting around safely. And that just looks to me like a future obstacle course. You know, it's a great convenience, it's good, yes, but then we also have to look at the consequences of it. More people on the road, it's already somewhat dangerous in this neighborhood, and the neighborhood is predominantly, there's a high number of seniors. So when I look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is, I can't believe the number that you want to put in here, because each one of those boxes represents a number of bikes. And if, you know, to have stations 1 block away, that seems very excessive. Very excessive. And at the meantime, we have all these other parks, put them closer to some of the parks. This is just gonna like make traffic and driving already in Bay Ridge a nightmare.
Well, this is the same consistency of stations that we have across of our service area.
Doesn't
Keep
matter.
the network consistent. I can't say that these stations will be smaller than other places in our service area. Like Midtown Manhattan has very large stations. Bay Ridge, much more residential. These are going to be on the smaller end of stations that we put out there. But the number of stations is totally consistent with what we've done everywhere else in our service area.
How many bikes per station are we expected to have?
It varies. Like I said, we put bigger ones next to like the subway stations and smaller ones like residential areas. But the average number for this neighborhood is 16 bikes or 16 docks per station.
And typically, let's say, just curious, on the ones that take up the parking spots, they take up what, 1 car slot, 2 car slots?
Yeah,
on average. Okay, makes sense.
a 16 dock station would be like a 2 parking. It would be 40 feet, which is like 2 parking spaces.
That's the average. So there'll be some that are smaller.
Yeah.
Especially at the end. Okay, Joe, and then J. Marie, and then Chris. So Joe first, please. Joe, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, Jack, my question is this something that we're going to be voting on? Or is it just something tells us what they're going to do and that's it?
So this is informational. We can provide feedback on siting, on locations, just as we are doing right now. But this report is informational.
Yeah.
So in other words, like when we just voted on like a sidewalk cafe and everybody says for and against, we don't do anything like that with these type of situations, correct?
We don't need to. However,
Okay.
we can provide directive feedback, and I would recommend more specific the better. So like the feedback that Doris gave earlier around that specific siting being potentially dangerous, because of the construct of the street. The more specific, the more useful system.
Right. And Jack, just a point of information, tonight's meeting is a presentation, and DOT has indicated that we can, provide feedback and comments, and we could certainly do that, at the June Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting. If members want to get a chance to go out and look at some of the locations and provide feedback.
That makes sense.
We have a
Thank you, Joe. J. Marie?
Thank you. I agree that with some of the comments that have been made, that we knew the expansion was coming. 50 stations was not something that the community board was aware of. And this is the first time we're even seeing this list. And that's something that, has been surprising. We've been hearing from residents and people who've been contacted that the city bike stations are coming in front of their area or near their area, and they have concerns. And so we want to make sure that we address those concerns. It's very, we're seeing your grid that you have here. I think that one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten is that people want to know much more specifically about the parking spaces and the loss of parking spaces. Some people are concerned about how this will also affect businesses besides residential areas. That's some of the feedback we've been hearing. And so what you're saying right now is about 50 docks with about 16 bikes per dock at least. It could be more, you said. And that each of these docks would take, if they had 16, it would take 2 parking spaces. So if you're talking about 50 docks, you're talking about 100 parking spaces, but it may be more if it's a larger dock, you said.
Well, I'm sorry, my Zoom cut out for a minute there, but that is only for the stations that are placed in parking lanes. All the
Mhm.
stations on the sidewalk will not take parking. All the stations in pedestrianized or daylit roadbeds would not take parking.
So if you could give the community does want specific information about parking spaces. So if you could be more specific, I think that would be helpful. I think it's also necessary while we're looking at a grid and we're looking at lists of intersections and all of us are trying to figure out where those intersections are. As I said, some of them may be by residences. I know an issue had come up that one of them was actually in front of a school. And it may not be the right place with all the children passing, with families coming and going. That may not be the right spot for it. And that's something that you have to really take into consideration. Bike safety and the safety of our community with some cyclists who are not following the rules of the road. That really is a concern for our residents, and that's something that's come up very often at our community board meetings. So I just want you to be aware of all of that, and I hope that the residents would have the opportunity to give their feedback to you as well.
Yeah. Thank you for saying
If
that.
I could say, what I was going to say, Sam J. Marie, is we definitely take all of those things that you mentioned into consideration. We are actually speaking, if we have a bike at a school, we're actually speaking to those schools directly, and they're giving us the feedback of their operations and how maybe this is not a good place for it. And we will be taking those things into consideration. I am going to say, and you guys know me, that there are certain locations that we may want to put it, and for someone just to say we don't want it there just because we don't want it there is not a good enough reason not to put a station there. But we did have a great conversation with one of the schools in your district, and they gave us operational reasons why it shouldn't be there, and we are definitely taking that into consideration. And remember, we're presenting these locations to the community right now. We're not saying that we're going to put them in tomorrow. We want to hear the feedback. We want the community to give us the feedback. You guys have my information. I know for a fact, because I've been working with CB10, you are very diligent when it comes to giving DOT feedback on any program that we're doing. So we're looking forward to hearing what the community has to say about specific locations. If there are specific groups that you think we should reach out to, please let us know. We put together a list of stakeholders other than the community board, and we've been reaching out to them. I know you know a couple of them because they probably reached out to the community board. So we want to be as transparent as possible, and we want to hear everybody's concerns when it comes to the locations of the station so we can take it into consideration.
Leroy, I did have
okay.
another question about that shape of the map. So like, you know, Community Board 10 encompasses more than the area that is highlighted here. So I think that when we were talking about the expansion coming to Community Board 10, I think we were thinking of a wider area than what's located in this particular map. This map is really like I'm trying to see it more clearly. It seems to be like cut off by the highway. Is that correct? So like from
Yes.
Shore Road, right? But like, you know, Josephine is there. So like our whole community board map is really into Diker as well. Like you're just concentrating these 50 spots here in this patch of the map. So is the understanding that it's then expanding to other parts of Community Board 10, or is this the Community Board 10 map and the other areas won't be expanded to? Like we really
That's
wanted
right.
to understand.
This is the only plans for expansion we have right now. So yes, this is it.
But not to say we can't come back at a later date to expand it even further.
Right.
But right now, this
just
is the expansion.
just to be clear, that won't happen during this round of expansion plan.
Oh, no,
That
no,
might
no.
happen
Definitely
in
not.
later
Years.
rounds of expansion plans.
Yes.
Okay. And then I just want to pull another question out of Jane Marie's first set of questions, which is how many parking spots do you expect to be removed? Because there's also questions from the community on that.
Yes, we don't have any exact numbers, and we won't know exactly until we plan each of these stations, like technically on the street. But I mean, I think you can make a guess at it from, an average of 2 stations per parking lane proposed site here.
And how many squares are there on the total of the 4 maps?
I have not counted them up exactly.
There's probably a little bit more than 50. So generally what happens is we might like remove a grid here or there because there's a lot of like excess green space, or maybe there's a lot of highway, industrial, there's a variety of land use things that happen, which make things not viable, and why we would maybe not consider that grid. And then just to kind of make sure that everybody understands, like when we put stations down, we don't put them down without notifying the adjacent property owner, whether that's a business owner, a residential, like a building owner, anything like that. So we do notify all adjacent property owners before they go down, just to make that clear.
Thank you, Lisa. Chris, you've been waiting for some time, so please.
Okay, so I have a comment and then I do have a question. I have no problem with promoting, the use of bikes so that people use their cars less, but I think that City Bike is a really flawed program, because I want to go back to something that Staley said, and it's not something that he said alone, but I think we were all coming to understand this. I don't want to see DOT working for Lyft. I mean, if this program as a bike share succeeds by enabling enough docks so that people can take and dock bikes that they use, then it goes back also to what Doris was saying. Like, why is that station only a block away? Well, because if the bikes are being used along shore or shore road, or the racks are full, and you've taken a bike to shore road and there's no place for you to dock it, you need another dock. So what's happening is you're giving Lyft all of these public parking spaces to create their success, rather than in taking that investment or policy or encouragement to ride your car less and get on a bike in alternative ways. So my question is that really, is that the consideration, that you need more docks the more people use these bikes, so you're going to be taking up more spaces eventually? Because the program won't work if people don't have a place to dock their bike, correct?
I mean, correct. I think, the reason we do have such a dense network of stations is to kind of help mitigate that. So as one of the other board members mentioned, he came to a dock that was completely full, but there's another block or two away. That sort of redundancy allows reliability for the system and riders and users. We certainly don't work for Lyft in this capacity. Lyft certainly is putting these stations, on the ground at our discretion. So Lyft doesn't really have a say, other than in technically viable opportunities.
But they can't turn a profit if they're
Right,
not enough
and I'll
stations.
be honest, they won't turn a profit in this neighborhood. They only turn profit in the high demand, high density areas. So this will likely be a loss for them. And DOT is, pushing to make sure that this system is more accessible to all community members. We want to make sure that folks in Bay Ridge
I
have
understand.
the opportunity.
I understand. I just want to add one other thing, and it goes back to what Jane Marie was saying. So let's say that, going towards Shore Road, there's more residential versus rental properties, right? So the properties along, going further towards the waterfront are the ones that really rely on the parking spaces. Where if you're going towards Third Avenue and Fourth Avenue, I'm not saying this is a fact, but I'm just making an observation. those areas might be areas where people are more likely to rent or maybe want or favor not having a car and bike sharing. So, it really does come down to, I don't know how you're deciding to do this other than you need enough of these in proximity of each other. You need to enable Lyft to have these places because without you facilitating this, they would fail. You just said yourself they're not going to turn a profit. So you're like basically keeping them afloat by doing this.
No, so this
Well,
wouldn't
that's all I'm going to
necessarily.
say. I don't
Okay.
want to argue with you, but you
No,
just
and
said they're not going to turn a profit.
I
So
agree. I mean, what I generally was trying to say is like the reason for the redundancy is to make the system reliable. If the system isn't reliable for users, they're not going to do it. The
but
reason
at what
it's so
cost at what
unsuccessful.
cost? You're giving a corporation public parking spaces.
Sure, but it's a trade-off. It's a public good.
I think a public good has to be decided by the public. And I really didn't like how you did the outreach online. I really wish you would have come and maybe called for the community board to have a town hall on this topic, to be quite honest with you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lisa. All right, Joe, do you have your hand up again?
Yes, I did have my hand up again. So what I want to ask is, since COVID, that's all that you've seen was sidewalk cafes, roadway cafes, and that's taking away from parking spots for the community who support local businesses. And these local businesses need to survive. And now we're introducing an expansion of bikes that are going to occupy more roadways, take away more parking spots. I see a trend that we're looking to favor only, one sector of the community, meaning people who like to ride bikes. But what about people who drive cars? And what about the people who own businesses? What about the residents? Where are they going to park their cars? So I think this is something that needs to be looked at by DOT. They should do an analysis of how many roadway cafes are there, how many parking spots have already been taken away by that, and maybe come up with some alternative solutions to try not to take away any more parking spots that are desperately needed. I mean, we all live in Bay Ridge. It's a very populated area. You cannot find a parking spot. And, I just think that it's something that really seriously needs to be looked at if we're looking at operational and impact and all this other stuff. I think maybe it's something that could also be looked at as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe. Anyone in the room, and then we'll go to doors if not.
Yeah, Jack, too, we have a room full of attendees online too that have had their hands raised. So you just let me know when to start calling.
All right, one more question or comment from Doris, and then we'll go to the community. Can you unmute yourself, Doris?
Right. Yes, everyone will get.
I am concerned about the site at 96th Street and Marine Avenue. That's a very dangerous area. We had a fatality there recently. Not that block, but very close. And it's a very dark area. It's not well lit, and it's a confluence of intersections, roadways coming together. And I think it's a very dangerous location. And I would really like to understand your configuration at Shore and 4th. What is the west side of Shore and 4th? Do you have a visual of that, not just a picture that looks like it's on a sidewalk where there is no sidewalk there?
Shore and 4th.
Shore and 4th, yes, west side.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's coming in at an angle. So maybe we could say the south side instead of the west side.
Do you have a visual?
I can share. Oh, wait. So I keep getting dropped off the meeting. So I guess I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Sorry
No,
about
we did
that. I
not,
have
yeah.
no visual of the specific station yet. We're not at that point yet. This is our proposed locations.
Well, I will tell you, it's a very busy intersection. It is the access to a highway, and it's the
Mhm.
access to the Shore Road Promenade that is access. I was just there this weekend, and people could not walk on the pathway. They could not cross. People coming in one direction could, it's the sidewalk is probably only 6 feet wide. And it really cannot accommodate more traffic.
Okay.
And I
We will
really
make a
think
note
you
of
need
that.
to look at the logistics of many of the intersections you're discussing.
That one was actually suggested to us as a complement to the access to the greenway here on the Belt Parkway.
Well, stand there on a Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
All right. So we have 18 questions on the Q&A. Josephine, I think you mentioned there are some people in the room.
Yeah,
How do we
there's,
typically want to operate this?
okay, so how about we'll like alternate back and forth. We'll take, if there's public questions from the room, and then we'll go to the attendees list. So I think that,
Let's start with the room first.
James, did you have a question? Okay, all right, so we have James Vavis is here.
So, my name is James Vavis. I'm the president of the Merchants of Third Avenue. I represent the largest commercial corridor in New York City that stretches from 68th Street and Third Avenue to Marine Avenue and Third. We have over 500 merchants on that avenue, exclusive of the residents, the hundreds of residents that live on the adjoining blocks. I had an opportunity to meet with Leroy and his team. I'd appreciate that opportunity to get a look at some of the spots that will be proposed that are directly impacted on the corridor that represents the merchants of Third Avenue. There's several things I'd like to bring up that have come to light since this presentation today. It seems like if we're doing a rough estimate of it, it looks like that about 66% of our 2/3 of the proposed locations are on the street. The other third represents sidewalks. And now it might be off by a little bit depending on green spaces or whatnot, but give or take, those numbers are fairly accurate. If we're doing the math on this, it just seems like we're losing close to 100 parking spots throughout the community. I can tell you that along Third Avenue and the corridor that we represent is roughly 15 parking spots in one of the most difficult areas to park in New York City. Creates a significant concern for our merchants. People aren't able to come to the street, to the avenue and park and visit our operations and our stores to shop and dine locally. The DOT has already exacerbated that issue by putting in loading zones and removing 2 or 3 parking spots roughly every other block along Third Avenue. So we're already at a loss of parking to begin with. Addition to that, it seems like the grid overlay that you've presented from the DOT doesn't take into account population density. While I understand it takes in the folks from the DOT have been very precise in their statements that the density of or the accessibility of docking stations is equal throughout the city. You want to have them roughly every other block or every couple of blocks so that people are within a 2 or 3 to 5 minute walk to the next station. That doesn't take into account the density of the population. Manhattan has a much higher density of residents and people working there, as do some of the other areas that were in the initial phases of this rollout. Bay Ridge does not have that density, nor does it need the amount of accessibility. I think it also flies contrary to the thought of logic when one of the DOT representatives shared with us that Lyft is not going to make any money in this area, and it seems like we're forcing the DOT is forcing Lyft to put stations throughout Bay Ridge so that they can get to this fictional or number of 70% of the New York City is within a rideshare market so that they can advertise that for some reason. I'm not sure the value of that when the neighborhoods specifically are not calling for it. If there are neighborhoods that are asking for it, then that's a different story. But it seems like overwhelmingly we're hearing throughout Community Board 10 that while we will entertain the idea of it, we don't want it at this density and at this, these amount of stations. I think that there was a statement earlier by one of the DOT representatives that you will notify the adjacent property owners. Does the notification come with any rights, or is it simply, hey, we're putting up a station outside your location, and there's really not much you can do about it, we're putting it here and it's not gonna, we're letting you know that you've been notified. I've asked this question before, and I think I've gotten the answer from the DOT, but I'd like to share it with the board. In the event that these stations are not profitable and they're not used, will Lyft remove them? And I think the answer to that is, it's never been done. But from a business perspective, they've invested the money to install the station. If the station doesn't generate any revenue for them, it'll cost them more to remove it than it does to leave it there. So we're at a point where we're just going to put these stations in wherever they are and leave them until kingdom come. The additional concern is you said that you're putting them on sidewalks. Community Board 10 has recently gone under some renovations on our sidewalk curbs, specifically our ramps to make them more handicap accessible. We've been putting in the red patches so that people with visual disabilities will be able to see the ramps a little bit better. Putting these items, these docking stations on the sidewalk creates another trip hazard for individuals that have visual impairments. From a liability perspective, I question New York City has a very strict sidewalk law that if someone trips and falls in front of a property, it's the property owner's fault, it's a property owner's liability. Now that we're putting these city bike docking stations in front of all these buildings, who bears that's responsibility? Does City Bike and the DOT indemnify the landlords or the property owners at those locations as well as the merchants? If not, I think that's something we need to consider significantly. But overall, I will tell you that the overall consensus of the merchants of Third Avenue is that while we're supportive of alternative modes of transportation, we have significant concerns with respect to the amount of docking stations along Third Avenue specifically, but in the greater community, as well as the locations of those docking stations. One of those stations has been brought up frequently, the 99th and Third Avenue. It's outside of our jurisdiction, but I will tell you that the station number 39 at 88th Street, I believe it's the station number 39, which is right outside the Rite Aid pharmacy right now, is another significantly irregular intersection that's offset, which could create a significant hazard as well. So I'd ask that a significant amount of review be done on this, and not just review to say it was reviewed and then it's a fait accompli. I kind of feel like we're being told this is what's going to happen because the DOT wants it to happen without these accepted input of the community board. While we're having these meetings and sharing these conversations, I kind of feel like September we're going to roll around and see that 49 of these 50 spots have already been placed, and that would be a tragedy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. So DOT, if you want to respond to that, I'll give you a moment.
That was well said.
Okay, all right. And so let me cover some questions from the Q&A. So the first question was, how many parking spots will be removed? So obviously you don't have an answer to that yet. Second, 88 and 3rd has outdoor seating and 12 spots. So just note that intersection down that has outdoor seating. So take a look at that.
That's right.
Wait, sorry,
Yes.
so you said 88th Street, but you didn't give an intersection.
3rd Avenue,
Third
sorry.
Avenue.
88 and 3rd Avenue has
Thank you.
outdoor seating. That's not really a question, so I'll just move on to the next one. Catherine Jackson, I live at 95th and Marine, and I use City Bike, and with this, I will be able to use it more. When will these docking stations be up and running? I think that was sort of answered fall 2025. And then just the third one, because actual question, please clarify the 88th Street station between Ridge and 3rd or 3rd and 4th. So wherever 88th and Ridge is.
Jack, you should note for the record that more than one person responded, that several people responded more than once. So it's if you're counting the number of Q&As.
Okay, I'm just reading them down the list in the order that it was received. Just make sure we get to all of them.
So yeah, no, thank you. Apologies. You said 88th Street between
Ridge and 3rd, or is it between 3rd and 4th? If you can clarify
it
that.
looks like
There's an
sorry.
88th and 3rd Avenue.
Right,
and an
88th
88th
3rd
and
between Ridge.
4th.
Yeah.
Okay.
88th and
Specifically,
3rd.
Sam, where is that one at?
88th and 3rd would
Right.
be on the south side roadbed. The southwest corner.
All right, I'll go back to the room.
Okay, so Jack, we have some hands raised. I'm gonna allow to speak Lauren Petrie. Lauren,
Hi,
should be able to
can you
unmute.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just a few things. I live in the community. I don't actually live on one of the residential streets that I'm going to be talking about. But I do a lot of work on my street in terms of cleaning up tree beds, cleaning up garbage that's frequently all around. And one thing I do notice about city bike stations is how much debris catches in them. We have a big garbage problem in this neighborhood as it is, with trying to get people to clean up after themselves, clean up in front of businesses, clean up in front of their homes. And that's a concern of mine, especially on the residential streets. Another thing I just wanted to say is that number 2 was public outreach via that map where you could, select a spot or say, this is a great place, this is not such a great place. And if you guys notice on that map, not a single person requested for a station to be placed on a residential street. And yet there are many, it looks like about 18 that are on residential streets that are not already like the daylighting spaces. And so that would take up, about, as you say, 40 parking spots. I do want to note that I was unable to find any ridership details about riders with families. But, the ridership is 76% male. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with who's carting the kids around to all their activities. But, certainly in my own experience, living in this neighborhood, it is, we're going to activities in Rockaway, we're going to Staten Island, we're going to all these different places that are not, I can't put my kids on a city bike. So while I know that you did do public outreach by coming around and visiting these station locations, if you weren't sitting in a car waiting for a parking spot with your kids, you haven't had the full Bay Ridge experience, I don't think. I also just wanted to say, reiterate what the gentleman from the 3rd Avenue said, that it was the same grid as everywhere else. And I do think that it's really important to look at that this is not sort of the same neighborhood area as a lot of, as in the middle of Manhattan. So while I know there will be reduced numbers of bikes, still the number of docks is the same. And that was, that was really surprising to me. Yeah, so those are my comments. Just, those stations on 88th Street, on the residential street, on 95th or 93rd, I think, that Rite Aid block with the residential streets and many others throughout the neighborhood. I do think that should be looked at. None of those stations were requested on the public outreach map. There were no, residential parking areas requested, really, that couldn't be, put on a sidewalk. And, it seems like that was really for good reason.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next speaker, James Peterson. James, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to the committee and to DOT. Great presentation. I'm a 4th generation Bay Ridge resident. I'm a city bike rider for the last 6 or 7 years in Manhattan and Brooklyn. I love many of the proposed stations. I think we probably could have used more. I mean, I know that there are some large gaps on 5th Avenue as well as on Fort Hamilton Parkway. I checked the portal before it closed. a few weeks ago, and I was one of the people who suggested a dock at Tom McDonald Triangle, which is somewhere mid between the 85th Street and Fort Hamilton Parkway dock and the 6th Avenue and 79th Street dock. It is adjacent, or would be adjacent, to the B16 and B70, which take you to other areas in Brooklyn, some of which have city bikes, some of which don't. That bus stop, both of those bus stops, northbound and southbound, will be retained in the Brooklyn bus redesign. And it's also at one of the bridges to Dyker Heights. So it would be great to see a dock there. And city bike stations are parking spots also. So I appreciate the work you guys have done, and I look forward to riding when you come to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, Lee. Oh,
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone from the DOT for the wonderful presentation. Although I fully support City Bike and cycling, I think it's important to acknowledge the constructive criticism and concerns mentioned by everyone during the meeting so far. But I do hope that I wanted to make my voice heard as someone who supports city bikes in general and cycling as a way of getting around the city. And also just to acknowledge, like, I am a young person who lives in Bay Ridge. I also own a vehicle. I have 2 children. I own a motorcycle. I've lived in different parts of New York City. I think that seeing how City Bike has made different parts of New York City more accessible, it just makes me really excited that that's coming to Bay Ridge, because there are so many great things about living in this part of the city, but there are some small kind of connection issues. For example, if you're taking the R train to the Express N train, or you're trying to get to an express bus from one side of the Bay Ridge from the other, or you're trying to maybe you're taking the ferry to Manhattan. All of these things will benefit from more city bike usage. And just like my final point is that the things that really scare me living in this part of the city are cars that are going through red lights and cars that are speeding. I know, Doris, you mentioned a fatality. That's terrible. I'm really concerned about things like that. I'm wondering if that fatality was caused by a bicycle or by a car. But I think that including more city bike locations normalizes cycling. But yes, I do agree that there are a lot of kind of valid concerns here, especially for parking and locations. But I think that together we'll be able to kind of achieve a good balance. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Kristen Farley. Kristen, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, hi, I'm here. I live on 88th Street between Ridge and 3rd, and from the proposed grid that you had, there's quite a few stations coming around in this area. Up the block, we have Cebu, and they take the side of 88th Street, and they also take 3rd Avenue. And then across from my house, there's Tiny Tots, and they just removed 2 spots about a year ago. Is it about a year ago? Putting in no parking from 7 to 7. So I need to have a car because I have children, and my youngest one does not ride a bike. So I'd like to know where I'm going to park. They also took spots around the corner in Ridge Boulevard.
On Ridge.
Off the corner. I mean, we keep losing spots. And then, on February 9th, there was a fatality because somebody parked, I think it was like on 84th Street. They parked in front of a fire hydrant, and the fire truck couldn't get to the hydrant. You could check the news if you'd like. So, you know what, when people can't park, where are they supposed to go? So like you're saying that when people are riding bikes and they go to a docking station and there's not a spot for a docking station, imagine how you feel when you have kids screaming in a car and you're looking for a spot and you want to get in your house. I mean, I think that people that drive have a right to, the parking spots too. And 50 stations, and that's just proposed now. And then there'll be more. I mean, this is, I don't know where this is in the best interest of everybody that lives in this neighborhood.
Constituents out. That's what you're doing. You're gonna make us move like everyone else is ready.
I don't recall us speaking about the removal of any spots outside of Tiny Tots. Maybe Joseph, you can follow up on that, because I'm like the blocking the spots from 7 a.m. just to 7 p.m. didn't come across this committee.
Okay. So the next speaker is Shari Lewis. Shari, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. Russ, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I really wanted to echo what Lee Wilson said. Lee Wilson, find me on Facebook because you spoke very well on this issue, and I think we're very aligned on it. But I digress. I'm also a City Bike user. I've been using City Bike for the full 12 years. I also come from a family. I'm a fifth generation South Brooklynite from Bensonhurst. Now live in Bay Ridge. We all have cars. We drive. We also bike. I do think it's important that City Bike come to this neighborhood, but that's actually not what this is about. This is about making comments on places and where we can actually put the stations. So one thing I would like to encourage, and I have participated in the online map and added my 2 cents there, but this being a ridge, there are many steep streets, and I would like to encourage bike use to the train stations. So if we can think about making sure that there are stations actually at higher elevations, for example, between Boulevard and Narrows, or between Ridge and Colonial, in many places it's very, very steep. So we're not going to encourage people to take City Bike if we place them at Colonial versus Ridge, for example. So if there's opportunities within editing in that grid that you showed us, if we can think about slope and the steepness of streets to make sure that we're actually encouraging ridership, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker, Anthony Panaccio. Anthony, you should be able to remove yourself from mute.
Hi, everyone. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Excellent. So I have a few comments and then 2 questions. One, apropos to Zhang and the
Okay, you can
others,
go
the
ahead.
city. Yeah, you hear me? Hi.
Yeah, we can
Apropos
hear you.
to-
Hello?
Excellent. Thank you. Apropos to Zhang and the others, we call you guys shills. Take a look at it. You're in front of a computer. Look what that means. You could drive your City Bike, but City Bike produces nothing for the community. That's one. Number 2, I take umbrage to what the Leroy said about how just because we don't want it, we can't have it. Well, Leroy forgets that we pay his salary. It's we the people, by the people, for the people. Leroy forgets that. That stated, you guys could drive your bikes. I noticed no one drove the bikes in the snow, the rain. Yesterday was raining. I didn't see any of you guys on City Bike. So please spare me your nonsense. Number 2, who's making money? I want to know where this money is going back into the community. That said, Lyft or whoever is a private company. You're enriching a private company on our dollar. You're taking away our spots. Is the money going back into the community? My taxes go up, my utilities, everything's going up. Number 3, the other gentleman said, "Oh, I'm worried about cars." No, you're not. I'm worried about the city of yes. I'm worried about the drug dealers on 3rd. I'm worried about the low-income housing that's infesting our neighborhood. That's the scary part. I had two women walk into my office 2 days ago because a guy was outside on drugs, said he's going to rape and kill him. I had to drive them home. That's what I'm afraid of. So please stop your nonsense. You're shills. So that's my statement. The question is, how does the money benefit us? We're enriching a private company. How could a government enrich a private company? Where does it get back to us? That's my comment. I expect it answered.
All right, thank you. Let's go to the next speaker, Brian Hedden. Brian, you could be able to unmute yourself. Sorry, Brian, can you hear us? I mean, we don't hear you. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next.
Okay, all right, maybe I'll go to the next person. Maybe he's having trouble. Do you want to go someone in the room? You want to?
Yeah, I own property on 93rd and 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, having City Bike, I'm gonna be 75 in July. And we do have a lot of senior citizens that I've seen them trip over City Bikes. So that part is true. Secondary, I have a pre-K school on my block. And that's another issue. But can you imagine city bikes on top of traffic? Horns blowing and so on and so forth. A lot of them right on the sidewalk. I myself almost got run over by a bicycle. It's insane. I mean, Bay Ridge, I love it. It's a wonderful community. We have lots of shops, lots of restaurants. I've just about gone to all of them. It's a beautiful area. Parking is horrible. It's horrible. Right now, I had to walk here to walk back because where am I going to park? I might find a spot on a meter here, but when I go home, I worked for the correctional department for 20 years and drove around for 2 hours coming home off a midnight tour. I'd get stuck at work. I would come home 3 o'clock in the morning. There was literally nowhere to park. Nowhere to park. Not even the meters. And with City Bike, I've seen the way 4th Avenue looks. It's crazy. Cars are literally parked in the street. The bikes are facing the sidewalk, but the cars are in the street. Tell me if that's not a hazard right there and then.
Okay.
We've had enough with our community, with between the drug dealers in the neighborhood, Airbnb on my block. It's too much. It's just too much. How much more can we take? I'm a taxpayer. I own my own home, and I can't even park my car on my property. So, what does that leave the
Okay.
All right, thank you.
community?
Okay.
I'm not the only one that has problems parking. Trust me.
All right.
I feel sorry for the shop owners because
Thank.
we either have to double park and run and get our food or drive around for hours
Okay.
trying to find a place to park.
Thank you.
It's not feasible for the parts of the Bay Ridge. No.
Okay. We have about 7 more in the attendee room, Jack. So we will try to go through them, and 2 inside the room. So we'll go back to the attendees. Maria Brody.
Hi, thank you. I'm a business owner on 3rd Avenue and 88th Street and a building owner, 3rd Avenue and 88th Street for 30 years. And I'm also, myself and my family are residents on 3rd Avenue, 77th Street between 3rd and 4th, 45 years. And I live with my senior mother, and she's 87. She's still very active walking up and down 3rd Avenue. We struggle now. I had to make her get a walker just so she could protect herself from the bike and the people, so she has stability. We walk back and forth. Yeah, laziness. I could say, yeah, nice. I'll drive my bike from 77th to 88th. How convenient. But it's beautiful to walk. And even to make a turn down 3rd Avenue between 77th, between 3rd and 4th on 77th with the bus going down the street, my senior mother, who's the liability if somebody gets hit and hurt? Is it I get hit by a bike? Somebody gets hit in front of my property on a bike? What about the festivals? I got to have these bikes up and down the festival. You can't even walk on the sidewalks on 3rd Avenue. So what's the liability? How do we protect our seniors? What are you going to do for our community? Did you even take a survey and hand out a survey to ask us, my family, and our community, do we want this? But it seems like you're not even giving us an option. You're telling us what you're doing. Maybe we don't want it. Sounds cute. It sounds like fun, but it's going to become just a thing in the past because we're a community and we don't want to be a tourist town for people to get off the our train to come hang out in our community to drive bikes around. But that's what all I have to say. So whatever you do, I thank you for the work that you do regardless.
Thank you. Okay, we had someone in the room. You wanted to speak? Okay.
Yeah, if I could. So just a few comments, based on concerns that were raised. One, so I know that there are a lot of concerns about parking. This was said before. I think it, should be said again. Not every, dock that is on the street takes away parking. That's one thing. And 2, the average dock has, I think it was 18 bikes. That is not each and every one. 16. That is not each and every one. So the ones that are in front of residential buildings have less. And so say you're talking about one with 8 bikes, then that's only 1 parking space. And again, this is something that another speaker raised. These parking spaces for bikes, these docks, they are parking spaces as well. And so you're losing one car parking space and you're gaining 8 additional bike parking spaces. So it's not just a net loss. It's simply a trade-off. That's one thing that I wanted to bring up. Two, we're talking about giving away public space. Well, every privately owned vehicle that parks on a public street is actually taking public street space. And so we're already giving away public street space to store private cars. So that's another thing that I just wanted to bring up. Bike share, some residents are talking about businesses, and I can, share, I don't have studies in front of me now, but bike share actually helps businesses because you're, creating more ways to access the community. This is simply about making communities more accessible. As someone who uses bike share, as someone who cycles myself, when during the tons of times when there are problems with the train, it would be way easier to get here by bike share. And so, again, it's adding one more option to get to a community. Now you can drive or bike or take the train, or you can bike from the ferry dock to where you're going. So again, it's just adding more options. And also there are folks who are concerned about street safety. I want to bring up that less than 1% of all traffic crashes are caused by cyclists. And then when you're talking about the amount that are caused by city bike riders, that's less, I don't know what percentage of the 1% that is, but that's less than 1% of all traffic crashes. A large majority, more than 96% of all street crashes are caused by cars or trucks. And then the rest are like motorcycles or just other,
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Actually,
Thank
that
you.
reminds me of a clarifying question I wanted to ask the DOT here. The stats that you guys cited in your presentation, did they include the Jersey City stations as well? Just New York City. Okay. Interesting. Fascinating.
Okay. So I'm just going to be cognizant of time. We have a few more. I'd like to get through them. Catherine Jackson, if we could just consolidate if something's been said already or a question. Catherine Jackson, you should be allowed to unmute now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I saw where they put it in my neighborhood, like by 96th Street, and someone had concerns about that earlier in this meeting. On 95th and Marine, it's like where a bunch of streets converge. They already have areas marked off with big boulders so that cars can't cut through. That's already open space, and maybe they'd want to consider putting the bike docks there because it's already open space that's marked off that people can't put cars on. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes. Thank
That
you.
might be a suggestion. And, that would even be better for me because we're right outside my building. But it's like, I do take, like, City Bike is good because I could take it to and from work because I'm also a car driver. Like, I drive to and from work each day. And if there was City Bike, I could at times just getting in and out of the neighborhood. Or if I'm going to go to other parts of Brooklyn, I don't have to take my car or the subway. I can ride. And then when I ride a bike, I'm out in the streets and I'm seeing shops, I'm seeing businesses. When I'm on the subway, it's like I'm underground. If I'm driving, it's like I'm not pulling over and stopping.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I think that area on 95th and Marine where it's marked off would be good. And when did you guys say the bikes were going to be installed? Would it be like by this fall?
Yes, the
Yeah,
fall.
so we're aiming for this fall.
Okay, because that'd be great if it was like done by September, because I would definitely be using them when the UN assembly starts and traffic's out of control.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Next, we have Elizabeth Donahue. Elizabeth, you should be able to speak. You can unmute. Elizabeth? Okay, I think she's having, yeah, okay, all right, okay, inside the room, I'm sorry.
Hi, some of the topics that were brought up, concerns about parking, say maybe 100 spots, say 120 spots, whatever. What percentage of that is taken away? How many spots in Bay Ridge? There must be over 10,000 spots. You're talking 1% of the parking spots, if they take that many from the overall spots. You talked about parking on Third Avenue. I walk Third Avenue. And I met a lot of cars by the owners of the shops taking spots right on Third Avenue, but I'm from this store or something like that. So the shop owners complain about parking. They're taking, not a lot, but they're taking some of the parking on Third Avenue.
I think that further illustrates our point.
No.
There's no side street parking, therefore the
Okay.
merchants have to
But
park
they're
on the
taking a
avenue.
spot that's supposed to be rolled over so the customer can come. And they're holding the spot for the day, so that customer can't park because they're holding the spot.
Okay.
Right, so that does that.
Okay.
And the lady online said about, oh, we don't want people coming from other neighborhoods with their city bikes. And people on bikes are customers. They're here, they come to eat, they come to shop, they come to do things. So to say that you don't want people on bikes to come here, that's against the value of the bikes that bring, where other people are talking about where's the money going, where's it coming from? It's coming into the shop owner's hands. Talk to the people out in Rockaway, how many people bike to Rockaway during the summer and spend their money out there while they're at the beach, that don't have cars, they don't park. And again, that goes to the old lady online that says, oh, I have kids I have to take. There's many families in this neighborhood that don't have cars, that do their shopping, take their kids to sporting events and to other things without a car. So to say that I need a car to do this, that's an insult to the families that don't have cars because they can't afford it or don't want one, that manage to do what other families do without a car. So
Okay.
that's what I want to
Thank you
say.
so much. Okay. We'll go in the room, Elizabeth SYSO. Elizabeth, you can unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth. So I live on 79th and 4th, and right now the closest city bike station to me is about a 15-minute walk away. So I really appreciate that you all thought about the time it takes to walk between stations. Having a station like a 3-minute walk from me or even less in the morning would completely change the way I commute to and from work. And I really appreciate that thought was put in. I just wanted to ask, so there was of additional community feedback that could be submitted, and that this plan would be published online. When the plan is published, will there be an inbox or an area for us to submit additional feedback?
Okay, does DOT want to respond to that?
Yeah, could you repeat that? Sorry, you were kind of breaking up.
Yeah,
Will there be opportunity for additional
So
feedback?
feedback.
Put the spots up.
Sure, yeah. So I think one thing to sort of reiterate is that we have from today, we would request that like all feedback be sent to us in the next month. And so that way we can help refine the plan and make any adjustments as necessary based on that feedback.
Okay, thank you. William Stratus, William, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I know it's been a long night and a spirited discussion, but in the essence of democracy, I think everybody's voice deserves to be heard. Just quickly, while I think everybody agrees that biking is healthy and in the right conditions can benefit some communities, I think we're totally neglecting what it is to be somebody from Bay Ridge and what historically has been the issue. Traditionally, and it continues to this day, we have issues with the elderly and with parking. And I live on 88th Street my whole life, and we've seen the spots disappear. We have a tiny tots, a school for little children where mothers come by and pick them up every day. around the corner on Third Avenue, as it was said, there's restaurants, there's accessorides, there's other people who need taxpayers with cars who need to park. And then the other angle or other issue that hasn't been discussed, since even the bicycle lanes have increased, nobody has done any enforcement of these bike lanes. So essentially the bike riders can do whatever the hell they want. I've seen accidents. I've been hit by a bicycle in my car. I see motor scooters using them. What do you think is going to happen? And what about Third Avenue and Fourth Avenue when the bridge gets backed up? Has anybody spoken about that? Or is this going to be another discussion like the cannabis shop on Third Avenue, where we had a public discussion, and now we have cannabis shops down the street from 4 schools, a nursery school, a church? I really hope the community's voice is really being heard here, because if you want to make this nice, put it in the parks. Beta it, try it out, pilot it in smaller. Rolling out 50 sites, I mean, says we don't care about the business owners. As somebody was so concerned about the business and the money come in, a leader of the business community spoke up on Third Avenue and nobody heard nothing. I mean, these are the people who are paying taxes. But again, it's not the businesses, it's the residents. Some of you have been generations here. And it seems like the elderly and the people in the community who are already suffering or are leaving. And not to mention the one passionate gentleman who had a right and asked for his question to be answered. His question wasn't answered. So I hope in the spirit of democracy and hearing the voice from the people who are on the phone and who waited an hour and 50 minutes to be heard. Wrapping it up, I'm totally against 88th Street. That was anybody who can sit there for 24 hours, can see what's going on with everything. And the last thing I want to say that was alluded to in the beginning, you really need to have failure criteria, because it seems like you're telling us how long this is going to be out, but we didn't hear what's going to be the criteria for failure. When is it going to be reassessed? When is this feedback going to be discussed at another public forum? Okay, that's it. And I'm a hard no on the 88th Street, as well as rolling out 50 sites throughout Bay Ridge.
Okay,
So
thank you.
just some comments there. So we will have another meeting next month to discuss this further. Again, at that session, we will attempt to provide very specific feedback around specific intersection. Obviously, there's a lot that's being said tonight, but we will have another session next month where we can summarize. And then secondly, on some of the e-bike comments that were just made, we will be having a meeting where the precinct safety officer will be joining to discuss e-bike enforcement, e-bikes on sidewalks, etc., issues that we've had in the community. So that's on May 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
May 2020.
Jack, do you want to continue?
Sure,
or
Carmen. One comment, and then we can continue with the rest of the attendee
I
list.
think one thing people are forgetting, we're not totally anti-bike. It's the number of docking stations. But the one thing that has been happening the last year is we have lost a tremendous amount of parking to trucks at a rate we never expected. So that's making hard. Now, people want to own a car, that's their business, and they have the right to, and they have an assortment of reasons for it. So some people, I choose not to. I don't like driving anymore, but if I wanted a car, I could buy a car. But the first thing that comes to mind is what came to mind 40 years ago. I used to work nights and I could not park. I would circle around for an hour 40 years ago, and it's only gotten worse. But keep in mind, it's not just bike, it's the number of parking spots, the trucks. And my church is encircled by trucks. It's horrible. It looks like we're a parking lot.
Trucks, 18-wheeler trucks or
And you name a size and it's gonna be.
The larger semi trucks.
So
Yeah.
that's one thing that
Right.
we have to deal with in addition to all these other services coming in.
Too big.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Carmen.
I'm talking about
Okay,
the number of
yeah.
trucks that are taking spots.
Jack, I just want to be cognizant of the hour.
Yeah, so there's two more. I think hands up, Nancy and then Brian on the call.
Right.
Can we have them?
Yeah, maybe we'll write it. I thought Nancy we had.
Nancy, we have right. Okay, Brian, I think fixed his
Oh,
issue.
Brian, we tried. Brian, can you unmute? I think we had trouble with them. I think we've heard
Alright.
everyone, Jack.
It's fine. So there's some other questions in the QA. I read through them all and just kind of pull out some I think hasn't been said. When there are bikes that are not on the docks and they're on the street, who removes them, who picks them up, who takes them back to docks, etc. Question for the DLT then.
Sorry, so you were saying who picks up the bikes?
Whenever they're like in the middle of the street and like someone just drops them
So
there or
Lyft
whatever.
does all of that. So there's a couple of ways that, excuse me, that information comes to us. So we recommend if you see like bikes in places that they shouldn't be, have them send information to the Borough Commissioner's office and to Leroy. They'll pass it along to us and we can expedite that. But there's also numbers, you know, and there's a website for Lyft where you can reach out to them directly. If you get no response or do it all together, we're happy to facilitate some of those things. And they do maintenance on the stations regularly, about a couple times a month.
Okay, and then there was a comment around 90th Street and Shore Road. There was from an anonymous attendee. There's no bus along Shore to get to the ferry. Are there any plans to put a spot at 90th and Shore Road?
We have a station proposed at 90th, at Shore and Narrows, which is very close. I'm looking at the map right now.
In the 90th, not 90th, in the 90th and Shore. I misread that question. Is
Oh.
there a reason why there's not really any stations in the 90s and Shore, especially since there is no bus along Shore to get to the ferry?
We have proposed the site at Shore and Ridge Boulevard, which is between 94th and 95th. And then one up at Shore and Narrows, which would be like close to Shore and 90th, if that were an intersection.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the other questions I saw from the Q&A that hasn't already been asked. Was there additional comments in the room?
There's just one more question.
Well, not a question, just some other information. So there was a question about bikes that are left like outside of docks and the sidewalk. There is like a chip, like a
GPS
yeah,
thing, yeah, right.
There's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
GPS chip within each bike. And so there are workers at Lyft who have like information, like they basically get alerted whenever there's a bike just left out somewhere. And so there are Lyft workers who, you know, they can actually see where each bike is on a map.
Okay.
And so they know if a bike is being left, and, you know, so in addition to like, you know, sending information to them, they also have that, you know, they can just check on their map. And also someone asked about partnering with Lyft, like for different community events and festivals. I know that at Transportation Alternatives, we've partnered with Lyft to get free bikes available for some rides that we do. It's something that they do often provide. And so I just, you know, wanted to, you know, tell you that it is something they do.
Thank you, Rose. Okay. Jack?
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Any other open hands?
Say something?
No. Larry has something, please. Quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Can I just say that at the beginning, I really don't think Community Board 10 needs city bikes. It's really folly because as a pedestrian and a motorist, I observed that bicyclists routinely disobey the most basic rules of the road. Any day you'll see they drive against traffic, they drive through traffic signs, the traffic signals, they drive on the sidewalk. Now, imagine if you take your automobile and drive it on the sidewalk. What? No, I'm saying, look at this. Look, and this
All right,
plan
let's
is
just-
just going to aggravate the parking vehicles. I know it's enough.
All right.
I've spent over an hour looking for a parking space, so this is just going to make it worse.
All right, thank you. All right, Jack?
Okay, so just to summarize, at our June meeting, so you guys, DOT will be publicizing this map on, what was it? I wrote it down somewhere.
The map will be posted to our website tomorrow morning.
Okay, the website link is, okay, nyc.gov/bike share.
Yes, and Leroy can also send that over to you as well
Yeah.
to make it easier.
Yeah. So at our June meeting, so of course I'll be providing an update on this in our May meeting. But at our June meeting, we'll be gathering more specific comments so then we can send it to DOT in a conclusive whole. I think I assume on the nyc.gov/bikeshare website, there'll also be an opportunity for anyone to be able to put comments in there on the map as well.
We have closed down the feedback portal that was open from January to April as sort of an open map to place points anywhere. Now we're looking for more specific feedback on the proposed sites. So
is there like a contact form, an email form, or anything on the site, just in case anyone from the community is not able to make that meeting in June to be able to discuss with us?
And certainly could share with the board office by email.
That would be the best way to do it. Lisa, unless there's an alternate.
Yeah,
Just
I
use-
think,
just-
yeah, send it to
Josephine,
Leroy.
Just
Yeah.
use my email address.
Mhm.
There'll be lots of emails coming your way, Leroy.
That's
so
fine.
basically, what I want.
I get that all day.
Yeah, what I would like is look, if there's a picture someone has and say, hey, look, I took this picture of this intersection. It makes no sense for a bike dock to be here because of XYZ reason. Here's a pictorial evidence. That would probably be the most straightforward way to do this. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't heard from. Okay.
Was there a question? So I just want to make sure that question was answered in the room.
Okay. Nope, I think we're good.
That's what I said.
All right, Jack. I think we've
Thanks
concluded
all.
all the questions.
I think so. I think it was a very complete meeting. Thank you so much for everyone, and thank you to the public for joining this meeting.
Thank you.
Again, look forward to email about our June 2025 meeting.